Hello guys, Alan here and welcome to the channel. This video begins a new series which we call the plumbing design series inside of Revit, and in this series we are going to be looking at how we can actually create plumbing layouts inside of the Revit software. It's like one of my very favorite topics when it comes to the Revit software, the plumbing design series. All right, so I'm going to show you guys how we can actually design our plumbing layouts in Revit and how you can actually go about your day-to-day life as plumbers, and how you can come off with all of those designs that you can think of inside of the Revit software. So without saying much or without much ado, I'm going to get started. But before I get started, if you're watching this video and you haven't liked or subscribed to my channel, please do make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. It's going to help me out a lot and it's probably not going to cost you anything. So just make sure you hit on the subscribe button below this video to subscribe to my channel, because you do not want to miss out on the kind of tutorials I'll be dropping here on YouTube. Alright, so I'm going to get started in here with our plumbing series. And before I get started with our plumbing series here, you need to make sure you have your architectural model already modeled out. All right, I have my architectural model here, which is this building I'm going to be using. All right, this building I worked on this several years ago for someone, so I'm going to use this building to actually come off with the plumbing design inside of the Revit software. So just make sure you have your own architectural model that you have modeled out inside of Revit. So if you're watching this video, I guess by now you should know how to model a building. If you don't know how to model a building inside of Revit, you can go check out my old videos and you can probably model out something, and then you can come in here and then you can practice along with me as we go through every step in the way in creating our plumbing design inside of the Revit software. All right, so I just ended off my previous topic, or our previous series, which was the template creation inside of Revit. All right, so that is also going to come in handy in this particular series. So now we'll need to, first of all, we are going to start off with the plumbing design, and first of all what we'll need to do is we need to make sure we are working in the right template. All right, we need the right template to work in our plumbing design. So what you need to do is you need to head straight into new in here under the models. Make sure you go straight into new. You're going to be greeted with this pop-up menu where we have new project, we have the template file, and in here we need to make sure we select the right template. All right, so if I should click on that, you're going to notice in here we don't have a plumbing template in here for us to be able to select that in. All right, we are just having the structural template, we just have the architectural template, the construction template, and we just have the metric and an imperial system of all of those in there. So I'm definitely not going to use any of these templates. All right, I'll need a plumbing template to use for my plumbing design. I'm actually going to work with this. All right, so I'm going to make sure I click on browse in there, and after clicking on browse, you're going to notice you're going to have all of these templates in there. But I'm currently in the English Imperial, which I'm not going to use the imperial system of measurement. I'm going to use the metric system. So I'm going to make sure I go back a few folders, and yes, I'm going to click on English in there, and we have this templates in there. So this is going to give me the metric system in there, and I can use all of this. So if you are using the feet, the inches, and all of that, you can use the imperial system template. All right, I'm going to be using the metric system, so I need to make sure I'm in the English tab. All right, so now we are in here and we need to make sure we select the right template. So in selecting the right template for your plumbing designs inside of Revit is quite very interesting. All right, so now you're going to notice in here we have several templates in there. We have some with the abbreviation GBRENU. Now this just stands for Great Britain. It's just an abbreviation for Great Britain. All right, so if you are in a country where your country follows the code and regulation of Great Britain, you can actually use that template. All right, so it's very tricky. It's not that tricky, but you just need to know that. All right, so you just need to know that this stands for Great Britain, and in Ghana, in our regulation here, we use the British standard. All right, so I'm going to make sure I select the British standard, which is going to be the GBRENU template. All right, so now it's very, very important that you select the right template, because when you select, we have the Great Britain in here, and we have the template for Canada also in here, and the ones you see with the metric are the American standard. All right, so now if let's say I was working in an electrical design, all right, an electrical design or an electrical drawing in there, and I select the American standard, when I select the American standard and then I open that template up, right, and I go in there and I begin to work in that template, you're going to notice I'm not going to be having sockets. I'm going to be having what we call receptacles. Now receptacles is the sockets that's in there. All right, and with the American standard, they don't use sockets, they use receptacles. So it's very, very important that you use the right template, and it's also going to come in handy also with the voltage. You know that in America they use 120, I think, and in Ghana here we use 220, 240. All right, when in terms of the voltage levels. All right, so it's very, very important that you make sure you select the right standard or the right regulations that you use in your country. All right, so in my country, in Ghana, Accra here, we use the Great Britain, which is the British standard. So I'm going to make sure I select that standard. So I'm going to select the plumbing default GBRANU, and you notice it has also the plumbing, the American standard also in here, but I'm going to select the GBRNU. So I'm going to click on that. So just make sure you go on Google, on wherever you are. If you're watching me from Sierra Leone, Pakistan, Mexico, America, if you're watching me from Asia, Russia, you just make sure you check your standard and then you select that in there. All right, so I'm using the plumbing default metric, not the metric. I'm using the British standard, which is the GBR ENU, which just stands for Great Britain. All right, just an abbreviation for that. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click on open in there, and I have this in here. All right, so now I'm going to click on OK to open that. Make sure you select project, not project template. All right, so this is perfect. Now we have our plumbing template opened up in here, and what you're going to notice is when you head straight into the project browser, you're going to notice this is different from the architectural templates we always used to select. All right, so in here you're going to notice in here we have the plumbing 1, plumbing 0, the ceilings, and we have 3Ds, and we have elevations, east plumbing, north plumbing, south plumbing, west plumbing. All right, so this is kind of different from our architectural templates that we usually use in there in Revit. All right, so now in this first part of our plumbing series, I'm going to be looking at us setting up stuff in there. We are going to make sure we set up all of the stuff in there for us before we get into the serious pipe work. All right, so we are going to make sure we set up stuff in this part. So I'm going to be explaining how we are going to be able to set up all of this stuff inside of just this single part we have in there. All right, so now the first thing you'd want to do now is you'd want to save the file. All right, you need to make sure you save your work. So it's very, very important. So you can hit on Control and S on your keyboard to save that, or you can head into File and you can click on Save, and it's going to save that. So I'm going to use the shortcut Control S, and I'm going to save this file. So I'm going to save it in the desktop folder, the plumb1 in there. All right, so I'm going to call this my Alan Architectural. Nope, let me just use my Alan Architectural. Let me just call this AA Plumbing series, Alan Architectural series. That's what the AA stands for. All right, so I'm going to go into options, and I usually don't like my maximum backups to be more than 1, so I'm just going to leave that at 1. Click on OK, and then I'm going to save it as a project file. All right, it's not a project template. You remember in our previous series when we were creating the project template, here changed into a project template, so it's project file. It's a project file, we are saving that in. All right, so it's cool by me, and I like that project template. You notice I have a whole lot of families set up already in there for this series. All right, so if you want to get access to my families in there, you can send me an email, and when you send me an email, it's going to come at a fee, so you just pay that fee, and I'm going to send you all of those families that I have in here for this series. All right, so this is all set up in there for me already. So AA, and I have the plumbing series set up. options also set up, and then I'm going to save this. All right, so just going to take a couple of seconds to save. All right, so this is saved now in there, and now we need to move on to us bringing our architectural model into our plumbing template series. All right, so we need to make sure we bring that architectural model into this plumbing template. All right, so like I said earlier on, if you have the modeled architectural building already in there for you, and you already have that designed or modeled up in Revit, all right, you saved that file already. Now you need to make sure you link that file or bring that file into this plumbing template. All right, into this plumbing template. So I'm going to bring in a building that I designed or I worked on years ago for someone, and I think I also designed the plumbing and then the electricals inside of AutoCAD. I'm going to be showing you guys how I actually did that, all right, in this part. So you need to bring in that model inside of this template. And how do we do that? We need to go into the insert tab. All right, so probably if you want to bring in anything into Revit, where you always need to go is definitely going to be the insert tab. All right, so I'm going to click on that insert tab in there, and after clicking on that insert tab in there, you're going to notice in here we have link Revit. All right, of course I'm going to link the Revit file, so I'm going to click on link Revit file in there, and I'm going to link the file. This is that file right here, this building right here, and I'm going to link that file. Just click on OK, and just bring this inside of this template. It's just going to take a second. That is if you have a very huge file. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this, and I'm going to just move this to probably just the center. All right, just hit on the arrow keys on your keyboard and make sure it's kind of like centered in between your elevation markers, because it's very important that you keep your project in between the elevation markers, kind of like centered in those elevation markers. All right, so I'm going to move this a little bit here. Okay guys, what do you think? I think this is centered in here, and this is perfect. So I'm going to click anywhere in there, or I'm going to click on this and make sure I pin this in there. All right, I'm going to pin it there so it doesn't by any chance move out of the way in there. All right, so this is pinned in here, and this is perfect. All right, so now I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and you're going to notice in here we have all of these already set up in there for us. All right, we have all of these in here set up for us, and this is the building I was talking about. You're going to notice in here it's a semi-detached building. I'm going to go into the AutoCAD file in a moment, but I just want to show you guys how this is coming off in Revit. So let me get into the 3D view in there. You're going to notice this is what we have for the 3D view for this building. All right, and I think I kind of like created a reel where I showed this building in there. I created a reel where I just made this building in there. Yeah, I think this building was what I used for my first 2 reels I have on YouTube, so you can go check it out. All right, so I'm going to go into plumbing, and I'm currently on the floor plan, as you can see. So if you've linked your Revit file in there, this is perfect, and you're going to notice my design here is kind of like a semi-detached building. All right, so it's just the same building here that I kind of like mirrored to this side. All right, so it's the same building which is mirrored to this side. All right, so everything you have in here is the same thing you're going to have on this side as well. All right, so if I should design the plumbing for this side, I'm going to mirror it, and then I'm going to have everything also on this side as well, which is kind of cool. All right, so this is perfect, and we have all of this set up for us in there, which is a linked Revit file in here. So now I'm going to go into my AutoCAD file and show you guys how I actually designed this inside of AutoCAD. All right, so I'm going to go into my AutoCAD file. Let me open this up, and this is it. All right, so in here I'm going to notice I have my electrical drawings. So I designed the building inside of Revit, and then I exported the floor plans into AutoCAD, and then I went into AutoCAD, and then I kind of like made all of my plumbing. I made my plumbing, and then I made my electrical drawings inside of AutoCAD. And why did I put the plumbing drawings on the electricals in there? I need to change this, so let me just move this out of there and bring this here. All right, this is for plumbing, and I'm moving this electrical for this. All right, this is supposed to be here, and this is supposed to be here in there. All right, so this is perfect, and keep this here. All right, so now before you start to actually design your plumbing layouts in Revit, what you first of all need to do is that you need to first of all have a sketch or a fair idea of how you want to pass your pipes, all right, how you'd want the pipes and all of the waste, and how you'd want the supply from the mains to come into the building, and your ducts allocations, and how you'd want to also pass the pipes from the ground floor going all the way to the first floor, and all of your floor drains coming all the way from the top, and all of those stuff in there. All right, so you need to first of all make sure you have a fair idea, all right, or you have a sketch of what you are going to be doing. It's very, very important that you need to make sure you have a sketch of what you're going to be doing. So in here I have my plumbing drawings and I have my electrical drawings. Let me brush you guys through the electrical drawings, even though we are having a plumbing series. I just want to brush you guys through in there. So you notice in here we have all of these in here. I have lights on this wall, I have lights in the store, all connected. This is connected to the one gang one-way switch. This is connected to the two gang one-way switch. All right, this is connected to a two gang one-way, and this is also connected to one gang one-way, and we have a two gang two-way also in there. A two gang two-way means it's also going to be controlled on another side. So when you have a one gang two-way, it means that it's going to have a control on another side. All right, so the circuit is going to be open on another switch in there for you to be able to control that. All right, so I have also lights inside of my master bedroom in there, and this is it for this building. All right, and when you come in here to the power and the sockets layout, you notice I have my DB junction box and my sounder, my break glass in there, and smoke detectors, shaver sockets, and all of those stuff also in here. So I kind of like designed this in there, and I circuited everything in there with the TV sockets and everything also in here. And you come in here to my lighting protection. Of course you need to have a lighting protection for a building going up that high, so I made this design for that, and I have some details in here for that as well, and my schematic, and of course my power schematic layout. All right, so this is my schematic in here showing how the power is going to be supplied in the entire building, and this is the distribution board in there. All right, how we are going to have all of those sockets in there, and have some space also in here. Most of you guys are going to be confused because you are not an electrical engineer and you do not know how that actually works. All right, I tend to know how all of these are being drawn, and I kind of like understand everything happening in here because I've been working for an electrical engineer in Ghana, in Accra here, for almost 2 years. All right, and I think I'm going to put his name out there. All right, so I have two main bosses. One of them is Mr. Nathaniel Delima. All right, he's an electrical engineer in Ghana here, and he runs the company called MEP Solutions, which is the mechanical, electrical, plumbing solutions. All right, and his associate director is Mr. King Swell. All right, Mr. King Mawula with Swell. All right, so those are my two bosses, and they are electrical engineers and they are services engineers as well. So I've been working for them, I've been drawing for them for like 2 years, and they kind of like show me every single thing in there, so I kind of like understand a lot of stuff. So anytime I draw stuff, anytime we're on a project and I do the drawings, I send it to them, they check, they explain to me why I can't have a light here, why I can't have my pipes going through here, why I can't do all of those stuff in there. All right, so I'm currently in school with them. So that is how everything works in here. That's how come I kind of like understand kind of the stuff happening in here. All right, so I'm going to show you guys how you can design your plumbing layouts inside of the Revit software. All right, so and my bosses they actually work for the company called Crane Construction Limited. All right, so they work for Crane Construction Limited, and they have their own company which is called MEP Solutions. All right, so if you want to get in touch with them, you can just Google Crane Construction in Accra, Ghana, and you're going to find that company there. And I'm currently in that company as well, so you can actually contact me in there. All right, so I'm currently working for them actually. So I'm going to get started in here with our plumbing design in here, and we're going to get started. So like I said earlier on, before you start your plumbing layouts in Revit, you need to make sure you have a sketch of what you are going to do. All right, so let's say we have when it comes to plumbing, we have two different layouts that you are going to need to do, two different layouts. All right, so we have the cold and hot water supply layout. So that is for cold and hot water supply. We have that cold and hot water supply layout in here. And then we have the one for waste and soil piping system. All right, so those are the ones that are going to come off from your WCs, and also the ones that are going to come off from your bath, your floor drains, and also the ones that are going to come off from your sinks. All right, so and also the sinks in the kitchen as well. So those are for those ones in there. All right, so we have the soil layout, the soil and waste layout. All right, so the waste is for the ones in the waste is for the ones in the waste is for the ones inside of your sink in there, and then the soil is for your WCs. All right, so you can see in there I've labeled all of them in there. All right, so we have 100 waste pipe underground soak away pit. All right, we have all of those in there. I've labeled all of those in there with several manholes. We need to have inspection chambers or manholes, because in case there should be a choke in the line, we can actually get we can actually rod it, and then when we rod that in there, it's going to create that space, and it's going to create that free space in there, and this is actually going to slope all the way from this part and come all the way here into the septic tank. All right, so this is how I want this layout to be. So this is how I kind of designed this plumbing layout in there. All right, so now you're going to notice in here I have this dot. All right, so you need to first of all create a sketch of how you want everything to actually get out of your building, and how you'd also want main water supply to also get into the building. All right, so it's very, very important you create a sketch. So this is the right time I think you'd have to now sit down, and with the explanation I'm going to give you with my design that I did in AutoCAD, you can use that same explanation and apply that to the building that you have currently that we are going to use for this series. All right, so I'm going to start off with the cold and hot water supply. All right, so with the cold and hot water supply in there, check what is happening. All right, so with the cold and hot water supply in there, the first thing I'm going to cover is the mains. All right, the mains, which means that the water that is going to now come into the building. All right, the fresh water that is going to come into the building. Some of you are going to have the water coming into the building from a tank, or some of you are going to have the ones coming from the main. In my country here, we have what we call the Ghana water. All right, we have the Ghana water supply line. So maybe if I have the Ghana water supply line in my area, all right, I can tap from the Ghana water supply line into my building. All right, or I can tap from the Ghana water supply line into maybe the tanks I have in there, or I can tap from the Ghana water supply line to tanks that I'm going to have on the roof. All right, to tanks that I'm having on the roof, and then those tanks on the roof are now going to supply all of the spaces that I have inside of my building. So that is also one thing you can do. Or you can tap from the Ghana water supply line, and then it's also going to go straight away into the into all of the fixtures that you have inside of your building. It's also acceptable. You can do that in there. And now you guys are going to notice I kind of like forgot the plumbing layout. I should have done the plumbing layout for this. I totally forgot to do for this actual space in there for the guest washroom. For this guest washroom, I forgot to do that plumbing layout. I'll treat that in Revit. All right, and I also didn't do the waste for this. I'm just realizing that after looking deeply on this project. All right, I did this like a year ago. So yeah, so we are going to start off. So now this is the main water supply line in there. So you notice in there I've labeled that 32 diameter PPR pipe. So in my country we use the PPR pipes for the supply lines. All right, so my boss Mr. Nat, all right, and Mr. King, they usually I've heard Mr. Nat actually say he doesn't really like the PPR pipes. He likes the PVC pipes. All right, so but then we usually use the PPR pipes in there. So if you don't know what a PPR pipe is, you can head straight into Google in there, and let's just check this out, PPR pipes, since we are learning this together. So this is what PPR pipes looks like, and I guess you guys have seen this several times in, maybe if you've been to a construction site or a construction field, you notice in there, these are the PPR pipes you are going to see in there. So these are for the supply lines, all right? These pipes can supply for hot water and also for cold water, but for the hot water as well, we have those copper pipes that we can actually use for that, but sometimes we use the PPR pipes to actually supply hot water lines as well. So this is the PPR pipes I meant over there. All right, so these are the PPR pipes you saw me label in the AutoCAD. Let me change this to PVC. Let's see what we are going to get. All right, so with the PVC pipes, this is what the PVC pipes looks like. All right, and this comes in several sizes. All right, we have the 20 mm, we have 25 mm, we have 30, 35, we have 4 inches, 6 inches, and all of those sizes in there. All right, so they come in several sizes, and they come with several fittings in there. All right, so we have the 45 bend in there, we have the 90 bend, 45, we have the slow bend, and we have the Y, we have the T's in there as well. So you guys are going to notice all of those fittings inside of this series. All right, those fittings are going to come in very handy, and you are going to understand why and when we use all of those fittings. So you can see in this section right here, it has a couple of fittings in there. All right, so we'll get into all of that in this series. So that was just by the way, so you guys see what a PPR pipe look like. So you notice in here, when it comes to plumbing, you need to make sure you label your pipe. All right, it's very important. So we started with a 32 mm diameter PPR pipe, main water supply, underground, which means that this pipe is currently working underground. All right, so it works underground on this side, and then when it gets to this side, we supply all the way to this right here. All right, this pipe right here. So this dot you see right here is representing a pipe that is actually going to the first floor. So you can see on my label in here, it says 25 mm diameter cold water supply PPR pipe from above or to above. All right, so it's actually working as a pipe that is supplying from above or to above. So don't really be scared about these abbreviations, because with plumbers we usually use this abbreviation. So we have like I didn't put those abbreviation symbols in here, so I'm going to do that in the next part and show you guys all of those meanings, so that when you see any of those meanings inside of a plumbing design, or maybe you have a plumbing drawing in there, you can actually read and understand that. So this is 25 mm diameter cold water PPR pipe, which is actually going to the first floor. So if I should go to the first floor, which is the floor beside it, this is the first floor, you are going to notice in here on this side, all right, this is that side right here, we have that pipe in here. All right, so this is that pipe in here coming in that dot all the way on this side. All right, on this side, so this is that pipe in that dot coming all the way to the first floor to actually supply every single washroom we have in here. All right, so this is how that actually works. So you can see in here it's 25 mm diameter cold water pipe PPR from above or to above, from below or to above. The FB stands for below or to above. So this is a pipe, all right, that is going all the way to the first floor. So let's get back to the ground floor. So you notice we have the main coming in here, and then we take a curve into our dot and send a pipe all the way to the first floor. All right, and that pipe goes all the way to the first floor. Going all the way to the first floor also supplies all of these fixtures we have in there. Now you're going to notice in here I have my water heater in there. So this is just circles and all of, so this is just circles and all of those stuff is just circles in there, which I kind of like drew to represent our water heater. All right, so this is just a circle to actually represent our water heater in there. All right, so this is just a circle to represent our water heater. And you notice in here we have a valve in here, 2 valves. All right, so one valve is for the cold water and one valve is for the hot water. All right, so you're definitely going to have valves in there. They are going to serve as angle valves in there, and we are also going to have, they are serving as angle valves, and we're definitely going to have some angle valves right below our sinks. All right, so what are angle valves? So let me get into Google. So I want this tutorial to be as very helpful as it can get to each and every single one out there want to know how to actually design plumbing inside of Revit. So let me show you guys what those angle valves are. So this is the angle valves I'm talking about. So you notice if you have been to a hotel or a guest house, all right, my mom works in a hotel in the La Palm Royal Beach Hotel, so I've gotten the opportunity to see all of this stuff in there. And I also work with some services engineers in here, like I said earlier on, so they've shown me all of these fittings. All right, so you notice in here we have all of this angle valves. So this is going to be placed right under beneath the water heater. And also, if you've paid attention, if you're in your house currently right now, if you're watching this video, you can go into any of your sinks, all right, and go under the sink. Just try and get a view under the sink in there. You're going to notice you have this valve in there. All right, so this is the angle valves I'm talking about. So let me just put this away. So this is those angle valves. This is the display you saw on Google just now. We searched. All right, so these are just lines I actually just drew out as serving as families. All right, so we have this in here, which is the plumbing. We have the water heater in here, and you're going to notice when the pipe on this pipe actually going to the first floor, it branches in here and then comes and supply the WC. It supplies fresh water to the WC, and it also comes all the way in here, takes a bend, all right, with a 45 slow bend. It takes a bend in there and comes all the way in here, and after coming in here, it tends to supply the water heater. All right, you notice the cold water takes a bend and then supplies into the water heater. All right, so this is not a project where maybe we have like a stand-alone water heater where we have the whole system, a whole water heater system lying at the basement, and then that water heater is going to supply every building. All right, this one, every single space is going to have its water heater. Even in a kitchen, in kitchens we usually have an under sink water heater. All right, you're going to have some water heaters under the basins or under the counters, under the countertop. So it's going to be right under the basin in there. But I didn't use that in there because the clients didn't actually want the water heater in the kitchen. All right, so that was just by the way in there. All right, so you notice after supplying into the WC in here, we took a bend and then we supplied water. This is a water heater. So let me just show you guys what the water heater also looks like. It comes in several sizes, 1.5 liters. That's very small, so you can just search in there water heater. You notice we have the price in Ghana. I recently searched for a price because we were pricing a bill here at work. We were pricing a bill in there, so we needed a price for the water heater. We usually get those prices from Supply Masters. Yeah, we usually get prices from them, Electroland and all of those stuff. All right, so this is what the water heater actually looks like. All right, so let me use this. This is perfect. So you notice in here we have the cold water going in and we have the hot water. So when the cold water goes in here, the water heater now makes that water very hot. This is Ariston. Yeah, this is a very good brand in there. So we bring in the cold water into this water heater. When the water now becomes hot, we move that water all the way out and we supply that. All right, so now you notice in here the cold water comes into the water heater, and then when you need the water heater, the hot water now comes out, and then we supply some to the sink, and then we move all the way, and then we supply that water heater to the bath. All right, the shower we have for this sink in there. And you notice we've also connected cold water as well. All right, so you can have the cold water, and then we have the hot water supplying for the shower area, all right, for the bath area. And we've also supplied hot water to the sink in here as well. You can get rid of the hot water for this sink as well and just make it just cold water. All right, we can just make this entirely cold water, but if you want to make it cold water, you can. If you want to make it hot water also, you also can in there. All right, so now this is it for this section in there. And you notice the pipe also still runs underground. It runs underground in there. And I didn't explain the labels. All right, so you notice for this in there, for this connections in there, this is that label. All right, this is that for this connections in there. It's set to 20 diameter cold water or hot water PPR pipe connected to wash hand basin. All right, so those are those pipes connected to this wash hand basin, and this is 15 liters electric hot water heater unit. All right, so this right there is just 15 liters electric hot water unit, and then we have that same concealed shower unit. All right, so this is 20 diameter. You notice the sizes of the pipe changes. We started with 32 we went into 25 25 are the branch offs in there, and the pipes that are actually going to go all the way to the first floor. But with the ones that are going to supply into the staff, into all of those fixtures, are going to be 20 so you notice in there are 20 in there. All right, so 32 starts on the main, and then it goes underground. We went all the way underground, come all the way in here, and this right here is also a pipe. All right, this is also serving as a pipe that is also going to the first floor. So if I should come into the first floor, you notice we have that pipe here, which is showing on plan. All right, this is just for that pipe to show on plan. So you read that, you notice it's a 25 cold water PPR from below to or to above. All right, so that is that pipe in there, and when that pipe comes to the first floor, we just supply these sinks. All right, we just supply the sinks on the kitchen on the first floor, and definitely we have this also in here. All right, and with my kitchen, I did not place a floor drain. Sometimes you might tend to pour water on your kitchen space. All right, so it's very good you have a floor drain in there. I'll add that when we are working in the Revit file. I didn't add that in there. All right, I'll add that when we are working in the Revit. I think I added that in the waste and soil piping system. All right, so in here you're going to notice in here I have this here. All right, this is serving as a floor drain. You can see the label. Let me read that in there. It says 50 diameter PVC connect from floor drain, 75 waste PVC pipe run under slab. All right, so these are going to be running under the slab, under the first floor slab in there. This is just a 2-story building. All right, so let me get back into the cold water pipe. So you notice we come in here, this pipe goes all the way to the first floor, and while it's going on to the first floor, we branch off and then we supply these items in here. All right, so this is perfect. And after doing this, I just kind of like mirrored all of this. All right, I just mirrored all of this stuff to the other side. So it's just the same thing on the other side, because this is a semi-detached building. It's just the same thing I have on this side, which is going on this side as well. All right, and then when we get into the roof, like I said, you notice we still have that main water supply pipe. All right, the main water supply pipe, which is now going to go into that. All right, which is going to go into our tanks. All right, and then when it gets into the tanks, it's now going to supply our building. It's now going to supply our building in there. So we have that pipe coming all the way to the top into the tank, and then the tanks, and then from the tanks it's now going to supply all of those buildings. So you notice in here we have a space in here. This is a pipe going in on top of that slab to that space. All right, it comes all the way to this space also in there, and also comes all the way to the ground floor and also connects to that. So we can put a non-return valve in there, so that the water that is going to pump from the poly tank is not actually going to return back into the main line. All right, so we can put a non-return valve on this line. So it's plumbing. All right, so you can get away with a lot of stuff in your design. So I expect you guys to be very I expect you guys to come up with better designs in your sketch. All right, so this is tend to like representing my sketch. All right, I already have this drawn out in AutoCAD. All right, so now we are going to do it in Revit. So this is for the soil and waste in there. You're going to notice for the soil and waste, we have this for the WC. We have that connection in there, and this is going to be a P trap. All right, I don't want this to be an S in there. So if I have my WC, and an S is going to be like this. So if you have, we have just two types. We have two types of WCs in terms of the trap. All right, so it's not every WC that you can actually use for every kind of space. All right, so with this WC on the ground floor, I'm going to be using the P trap, and if I have a WC on the first floor, I'll use the S trap. the air strap one. So I'm going to show you guys how those are actually making sense. All right, maybe if you're a plumber, or if you're not a plumber and you are watching me and you just want to be able to design that, I'm going to show you guys what those actually mean when I get into the Revit software. All right, so we have this in here. So we have our septic tank. We always need to have a chamber, inspection chamber, before we get into the septic tank. So we have that in here, and moving all the way here, we have that chamber also in here, and come in here, and we have this pipe. All right, so this pipe is also running all the way to the first floor. So if I should go into the first floor, you notice we have that pipe in there, all right, for the soil, for the WCs. And then we have one also which is also running for the waste for the sinks as well on the first floor. So it comes all the way in here. So this is just the only WC we have in here, and with this we definitely need to have one in here for the sink, and we have one also in here for the main sink. All right, and then this takes a curve with a 45 slope bend, and then we come all the way out into this manhole right here. All right, this manhole right there, and we have this in here, which is the floor drain, collecting all of the waste water on this, come in all the way into this manhole, and then it goes all the way out. All right, and this right here is serving as a floor drain in case the area should be wet on the floor there. You can actually pour the water, is all the water on that space is actually going to slope into those floor drain right there, and then it's going to follow that pipe and come out of the building. And we have this also going all the way to the first floor, which is also going to collect those waste for all of these items up there. All right, so it's basically the same process as the cold water supply for that as well in there. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to get into the Revit software, and we are going to still continue to do some setups inside of the Revit software, and then we'll get into the serious stuff. All right, so I'm going to put this away. We are going to be referring this a lot of times in our design. All right, so this is my sketch. All right, because I've already drawn this out in AutoCAD, so we are going to be referring this a lot of times in our series. All right, in the course of the series. So I'm going to put this down in there and get into the Revit software. All right, so when you head into the Revit software in there, what you'd want to do now is, we would now want to if now there are two things that I would want to inform you guys about. So if, let's say, you are working on a central model, all right, with an architect, all right, we are working on a central model with several other architects or engineers, all right, and they are also working on the same file. So some of you guys are going to have your file in the cloud, all right, and you guys are going to be using the same AutoCAD file. All right, so any changes that you make on the model is also going to affect the main model. All right, so you are kind of like collaborating. All right, so what you'd want to do now, if you want to start off with your plumbing design series, is you need to now copy and monitor the most important elements that the architect is going to use, because the architect is the one in control of the entire file. So now, since I'm a plumber currently, now I'm a plumber for this series now. So since I'm a plumber for this series now, it's very, very important that I copy and monitor the grid lines and also the elevations of this building. All right, the elevation levels of this building. It's very, very important that I copy and monitor all of them. All right, so this one's right there. It's very, very important that I copy and monitor those elevations levels in there. All right, this one came with the project template. All right, these two actually came with the project template, which we'll get rid of in the course of this series. All right, so I'm going to go back into 3D, get back into the ground floor plan. So it's very, very important that you copy and monitor the elevation levels and also the grid lines before you get started, because in case maybe the architect should make changes to the building, which is definitely going to affect the grid lines and also the walls, you can also quickly also make changes to all of those stuff also in there as well. All right, it's very, very, very important that you copy and monitor that. So I'm going to show you guys how you can actually do that. But if you're not working on a central model and it's just the final thing that you guys have in there, and you're not going to need any external architect changing all of those stuff in there, you can quickly just start off by designing your plumbing series in there as well. All right, you can quickly just start off by designing your plumbing series also in there as well. All right, so if you're not going to need that, you can quickly start off by designing the plumbing series there as well. But if you want to do that as well, I'm going to show you guys how you can actually also do that in Revit. All right, but before we do that, also, that was just by the way, it's something that you need to know. And before we do that, I'm going to head into systems. All right, on my panel right here, I'm going to click on systems. All right, and after clicking on systems, you're going to notice in here with the plumbing and piping. All right, you notice in here we have all of those fixtures in here. We have the pipe placement, parallel pipes, pipe fittings in there, which is very, very important. All right, we have all of those pipe fittings in there, and we have pipe accessories. We have pipe flex pipe, flexible tube pipe, all of those things in there. All right, so now, and we have plumbing fixtures. If you want to load in plumbing fixtures, all right, which are going to have the real connectors in there, right? This is the right template or the right place that you need to go into. All right, so in here, if I should get into architecture, click on components, you're going to notice in here we have a lot of plumbing fixtures loaded up in the software. Right, this is because we've selected the right template. So you're going to notice in here, everything in here is being set up for us. This is kind of like perfect. We have some stuff that we can work with. If I should use the architectural template, I'm not going to have all of these. All right, so that's why it's very, very important that you select the right template. So I'm going to go back into system, and you are going to want to click on this arrow down there that kind of looks like it's pointing to the corner. All right, the edge in there, just click on that arrow. All right, any of those arrows you see in there are actually settings. They are actually settings to the particular subcategory you have in there. So with HVAC, if I click on that, I'm going to have some settings for that. All right, so with electrical, if I also click on that, I'm going to have some settings also in there for that. All right, with my cable size, conduit size in there, with the wire size, wiring, and all of those stuff. So when I get into electrical designs in Revit, I'm going to be talking about all of this in there. Right, I'm going to get out of there, and we are going to deal with the plumbing aspect. So I'm going to click on that side in there, and this is perfect. So we have this in here, which is for that plumbing side. And what you need to do now is, you notice it's being divided into two categories. We have the duct settings and we have the pipe settings. All right, so I'm going to deal with the pipe settings currently. All right, so you'd want to go into the pipe settings, and when you click on that pipe settings, just click on that pipe settings in there. And if you should head into, you're going to notice you have some pipe settings in there. So you have pipe fitting annotation size, which is set to 3 mm, pipe size prefix. We don't have anything in there. Pipe size suffix and pipe connector separator, all of these settings in there. So these are just abbreviations. Now you notice in the AutoCAD, where my AutoCAD, you notice in the AutoCAD, in my abbreviation in there, I use this for the abbreviation of from below. All right, and we have to above. All right, so in AutoCAD you can also set this up. So setup button is set to BU, set down from top. All right, it's set to SD, so flat on bottom. So these are just abbreviations that you can change if you want that in there. So now let's click on angles. All right, so with this, it's just going to tell you the angles at which you want your pipes to actually turn. All right, so sometimes you might not prefer, so this is all going to be based on the regulations or the code in your country. All right, so it's very, very important that you know all of those codes and those regulations in your country. So with this, you can set this up to use any angle, or you can use specific angles. All right, so you can click on use specific angles, and I'm usually going to uncheck the 11.25 and uncheck this and just leave the 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 and 90. So these are the main ones I usually design my plumbing series to actually get into, or my plumbing layouts to actually fit into. So you can use any angle, or you can specify the angles depending on the code in your country. So I'm currently good with the 30, 45, 60 and the 90 degrees angle. All right, so I'm good with those bends. All right, these angles in there, I'm very good with that. So I'm going to click on OK for that. Oh, I'm going to get back into the settings, and since I've done that for the angle, I'm going to go into conversion, and you notice in here we have some settings in here that you can actually do in there. So we have in there with the system classification, which is set to hydronic supply. So if it's for domestic cold water that you are actually doing in there, you can set this up for the domestic cold water supply, or hydronic supply in there if you want. With the pipe type, it's set to standard in there. All right, so you can use cast iron, plastic pipe type if you want. With middle elevation in there, you have these settings in there. All right, and with the segment and sizes, we have this in there. All right, which is set to the size of the pipes in there. All right, so like I said earlier on, we have different sizes. So you remember in the previous part, we started with 32 pipe, we went to 25, and we branched off with 20, and we started with a 22, we started with a 20. Let me get back into the AutoCAD file. So we started with the 32 pipe, and we were going, and we branched off with the 25 we sent the 25 up all the way to the top of the building, and then with the supply lines into the fixtures, we use the 20 all right, so these are the pipe sizes that you have inside of Revit. So if maybe in your country or in your code in your country, maybe you don't have the particular size of the particular pipe that you need in there, you can come in here and just set up the pipe size that you need. All right, so you can just click on new size, just click on new, and then you can set up the inside diameter and the outside diameter of your pipe. All right, the particular pipe that you want to use. So I think I'm fine with all the pipes in there. I have 4 inches pipe, and I have the 6 inches pipe as well. All right, I have 6 inches pipe also in there as well. For me, I think it's fine. 20 millimeters, 300 in there. Let me just kind of convert this. All right, so you can go onto Google and then make some conversions, but I'm going to work with that later on. All right, so I think I'm fine with all of these pipe sizes in there. I'm fine with all of them in there. All right, so you can come back into the fluids, and in here, of course, the fluid we are going to probably work with is water. All right, so you can actually set this up for any kind of fluid that you want. And with the slopes, all right, so with the slopes, some of you guys are going to want your slopes to be in maybe 1%. You want to have 1% slope in there or 2% sloping in there. It's actually by your own choice. All right, so you can set up the kind of slope that you want. All right, I remember when we were designing a hospital. We were doing the plumbing layout for a hospital, which even we are still currently working on. So we're talking about the slopes, and I think my boss said we should do 1% slope. So at every 1 in 100 millimeters, it's going to go down 1 millimeter. All right, so we did that 1% slope in there. So you can probably check out the slope that you want. All right, so if any of these slopes don't actually work for you, you can just go in here and then set up a new slope in there. All right, and with the calculation, this is what Revit is actually going to use. All right, it has some formulas in there, which is the Colebrook equation and the Haaland equation as well. All right, so you can use any of these equations to come off with the calculation method for your pipe straight segment pressure drop calculation. All right, so you can use any of them to actually come off with the calculation, and Revit is going to generate that for you. All right, so and with the flow as well, with the plumbing fixtures, you notice in here it says this method converts from fixture units to volumetric flow using values found in the 2012 International Plumbing Code, right, table. And you know there's a code there. The flow conversion method is specified in the piping system type properties for domestic hot and cold water system classifications. The resulting flow is used for the pipe sizing. All right, so this is it for that in there. All right, so you can set all of these settings up in there if you are designing that for that as well. All right, so I'm cool with that, and I've probably set those up to probably everything I want to do in there. And now the first thing I'm going to want to do now is to actually do my copy and monitor system. Or I want to copy and monitor all of the grid lines and also the elevation levels inside of Revit, but I'm going to do that in the next part. All right, so now I'm going to end in this part, and we are going to take off in the next part, where we are going to start off with some serious work. All right, some serious stuff. So I hope you guys have found this part very interesting. If you're watching and you haven't liked or subscribed to my channel yet, please do make sure you like and subscribe to my channel, because you do not want to miss out on the kind of tutorials that I'll be dropping on YouTube. All right, so I'm going to catch you guys in the next part. Just make sure you've set everything up and practiced along to wherever we've gotten to now, and we are going to continue in the next part. I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.
I'm still working real hard on a Saturday. A future I don't see from a mile away.